Hey there! I just wanted to drop in and give a little bit of explanation on our next activity. So, by now, you should have already submitted your assignment 2.1, the research proposal. If you have not done so, make sure you do it as soon as you can. It's already late. I will still accept it, but I will mark it late if you hand it in after the deadline from yesterday. I'll be getting that back to you within a week, and so I look forward to reading about your project and where you're going to go with it. So now, our activity for Friday is our short write 2.2. And here, to prepare for this activity, you need to read an article. And this is an opinion piece from the New York Times from a couple of years ago about how the coronavirus, the experience of the coronavirus, has changed our ideas about death. And it's a really interesting article because it's about a topic that we usually hesitate to talk about. Death is not a very comfortable topic. And it's also, I think, giving us new perspective on death. It might not be as final as we tend to think. And so for this exercise, first thing you want to do is read this article. There is a PDF uploaded to the module, so you don't have to have a subscription to the New York Times. You can just download the PDF. And then for the short write, you have a choice of 4 possible questions to answer. Now remember, you only have to choose one. So your first option is to look closely at this particular quote. So the quote reads for option number 1, dying is no longer so intuitive as it once was, nor is death necessarily the great equalizer. So for this first option, you could write at least 200 words explaining what this quote means. And so why is it no longer intuitive? What does the author mean when he says great equalizer? Why did we think of death that way before? And why aren't we thinking about it that way now? You have a second option to choose. Number 2 is focusing more specifically on how this article is really an extended definition of death. Now, last week we talked about the idea of definition and how we can use definition in our writing. And here we could also discuss this whole article as if it were a new definition of death. And so for the second option, you could explain, how does the writer define death? What would you say is the definition he finally comes up with? And would you modify any parts of this definition? Next is option 3. If you choose option 3, you will be thinking about how the writer has created an interdisciplinary argument. He pulls information from science, from technology, law, psychology. And so for number 3, you want to explain how the writer pulls from these different fields, the kind of information he pulls from these different fields. And you want to use examples from the reading to support your points. And then you could choose option 4. And in option 4, this asks you to focus on the rhetorical strategy from this week, and that is narrative. Narrative is very simply telling a story, giving a sequence of events that often shows causation. One leads to the next one, leads to the next one, etc. And so here, you would be composing your own narrative about the pandemic. We could also look at this article as a kind of story about the pandemic. So for option number 4, if you want to choose the 4th option, you would be writing your own narrative about the pandemic. Maybe it's something you heard, or something you actually experienced. And you should incorporate the elements of narrative that are discussed in the chapter on narrative. So you have a little more reading to do if you choose that one. So I look forward to reading your proposals. I'll be working on those today and tomorrow. And I look forward to seeing what you think about this article. It's a pretty cool topic.